Do you want to be part of changing the world? It's not going to happen in our generation. But do you want to be the one that 7 generations down the road, we've really turned things around and our society does really protect our children and the children really are centered and that our families are supported? Oh, wouldn't that be freaking amazing? So we can do that, but we got to start with our inner children. Hi, everyone. Today is going to be a little bit of a heavier subject. I'm recording this around the time that the Epstein files are being released, and a lot of things are coming out around that. I'm going to be a little bit careful about my choice of words here, but I want to talk about protecting our children and abuse. So apparently it's important that I'm a little bit careful about the words that I use. I'm not sure if it really matters, but I don't want this to not get shown to people. So I'm just going to use the word child abuse. Now, we all know what I'm talking about, that this isn't just child abuse. This is a specific type of child abuse. And so before I even go any further, I want to tell you that I have personally experienced this type of child abuse, not in the same way, but I experienced it as a young girl. And I want to talk about why it's so important to me to do what I do and create the circle of why I do what I do around inner child work. But I think what's really important to first say is that I ultimately care so much about the children. I believe that it is society's job to protect children, to hold families, to revere families, to know that our children are the future of humanity and that we can't be short-sighted on that. We can't think, oh, well, I'm not going to be around for 3 generations from now. In fact, there's a Native American quote that talks about that everything should be done with 7 generations in mind. And I would really like for us to embody that thinking, to not be short-sighted, to recognize the importance of us being able to be the kinds of parents that our children need us to be. And then that means we need a society that values parenting, that values families and values children, that sees the importance in prioritizing our children and our families. And so if I were the person in charge, I would absolutely be revamping everything such that our children and families are supported and that children are protected. I would create workplace policies around pay it forward model where the people who are younger and the people who are older are taking care of more of the work while the parents are able to spend more time with their families and prioritize family. And then when they come back after their kids are in school, that they're not treated less than or marginalized because of their prioritization of their family, but instead they are welcomed back into the family. And that then they, as they get older, will also pay it backward, so to speak, to the future parents that come in who are working and then raising children. And I know that that's so pie in the sky, and I get that. I am well aware that we do not live in a society that protects its children. We do not live in a society that protects parents. We live in a society that is deeply, deeply broken when it comes to families and children. We do. And I'm surprised that people are so surprised. I am saddened. I am heartbroken, but I'm actually not that surprised to see what's coming out. I'm really not. I think that there's a tremendous amount of delusional thinking that we live in a world where people actually do really genuinely care about protecting children. That's just not the world we live in yet. I do hope that we do at some point. But it's not just about the people who are actually abusing them. I think there's a lot of other stuff happening where just children aren't that important. Their emotional lives aren't valued, or they're so overvalued that they're not even allowed to be kids and play. Like there's these pendulums that swing everywhere. And I think we can be doing better. And I know that that's something that's not easy to hear because if you're a parent, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I already have so much pressure on myself. I already beat myself up. And we're so careful about not overburdening parents and not making them feel bad and all of that. But here's what I want to say about that. Don't you think that a big piece of the reason why our parents aren't thriving is because we as a society don't value it, don't value parenting, don't value families, that we don't prioritize our children enough to create systems and structures that support them? I mean, I think that parents are awfully stressed out. I think when both parents are working full time and they're having to work full time while taking care of their children who are, sometimes sick and needing other things, it's just a lot to bear. So I don't blame the parents themselves. I actually think it's systemic that we do not protect our children. We do not support parents. We do not even have systems and structures that provide our children what they really need. So that's my first thing I want to say. So I'm kind of annoyed a little bit by just that people are so shocked. I think this is happening all over the place. There's so much domestic abuse and domestic violence, and there's so much child abuse and child violence. And I think that the fact that people are shocked tells me that people are living in a world that they want to be living in, but not the real world that we live in. And there's no way we can protect the children and take care of them if we don't get really honest about what's going on and start to stand up and fight for the children. And I will just say this about the men who might be listening is that while I do get that there are statistics that show that women are abusers as well, it's coming out that there are a lot of men who are doing some pretty gross things with girls and boys, with kids. And I would like to think that the men who are watching this, who are also repulsed by this, would stand up and start to call forth these men to say, what are you doing? What are you doing? So now I want to tell you what this is really about, which is why I do what I do and how it changed over the years. Because I started out as a health coach, and then I became certified as a life coach, and then I became certified as a parent coach. And I thought I was going to be a parent coach. But what I realized is that part of the reason why we parents struggle to be the kinds of parents that our children need us to be is because we are struggling internally. We are struggling internally because we have passed on generations and generations and generations of trauma, each generation passing it down to the next generation. And we're at a breaking point. And that's why there are so many amazing women and maybe men, but I work with a lot of women who are in the spaces of conscious parenting, trying to break these generational patterns and not do this to their children, to clean up their own stuff so that they don't pass it along. And I love that. I love being parts of those community. Dr. Shivali has been such an instrumental person in spreading the word on how we can do better and the importance of us doing our own inner work to be able to do that. And I hope I'm playing my part as well. Because what I realized is that I didn't go to parent coach training to become a coach for parents to parent their children. I went to parent coach training to help you to become the parent of your own inner child. Because what I have realized is that the best work that I can do for the future of humanity is to help people to know exactly how they can heal their own inner child so that they don't project all of their own trauma, pain, wounding, stories, beliefs, all that stuff that's been passed along to them generation after generation, that's probably stored in their DNA, that they interrupted, that they say, this stops here now, this stops here. And you know what's really cool about this is it doesn't even have to be parents of the youngest children. It's any age. So a grandparent who decides to do this work, to reparent her inner child or his inner child, and then heals, it actually heals the lineage forward and back, but definitely just say they become different with their children, who then become different with their children, who then become different with their children. It is worth it. As long as you're not dead, it's worth it. Anyone can do this at any time, and you will positively affect the lineage of your family. And so I decided that the best work I could do would be to start at the root. Because me helping people to come up with strategies around parenting and all of that, I do that with my clients when they need me to. But at the core, what I want to know is what's going on with you? What's going on with your inner child in this situation? And how can we reparent her or him so that we can get to the place where we're in wholeness? Because that's what ripples out. Us coming into our own healed place is what changes things without having to effortfully think through everything. We just become a different person. Like, say, for example, I don't have the ability to sit with my own emotions. And so when my kids come to me and they have emotions, I maybe shut them down. Maybe I'm having a hard time being with them. I'm just trying to help them or fix them, or I'm telling them not to feel that way, or that that's silly that they feel that way. Whatever it is, whatever on that range of possibilities. And then that child learns maybe how not to feel their feelings, and they suppress their own feelings, and we pass that along. What if I start to be able to face my own feelings and feel my own feelings and heal that pain from me where I had to maybe go numb or shut down my feelings? Now I have just opened this up inside of me. So that means every single person I touch is now going to have that a little bit awakened in them. And every person in my lineage is going to have some part of that healed. So for me, that's why I do what I do. That's why I want to start at inner child, not necessarily child. But make no mistake, my deepest goal is to be an advocate for our children, to be there to protect them, to create a society that centers them and centers families. When I was raising my kids, I was actually hopeful that I was and other people were changing the world by how we raise our children. And I do believe we are. I do believe that all the conscious parents out there, all the parents who are trying hard to heal from inside and then see how that gets reflected in their parenting in their children, I genuinely, genuinely believe that that is the path to changing the world, to making the world a better place, and certainly to making it a better place where we treat our children better, where our children become safe. But I also felt like I got a little jaded. I did, because I saw the ways that people treat their children and thought that it was okay. I see the way on TV that people treat their children, and then that seems to set up a way of being. So much drama, so much reactivity, so many children who are just expressing an opinion and their parents shut them down, or the child has a preference and they're told that they're back talking. And it's creating this idea that that's what a normal family is. And I think we need to denormalize a lot of the drama that's happening, a lot of the reactivity that's happening, and start to provide some resources. Provide TV shows that actually show families that are sorting things out and working things out through open communications, through honoring that we have to do our own healing first. But I think it's a little pie in the sky, optimistic, naive right now. So we live in a world that still causes terrible harm to our children. We live in a world that doesn't protect our children. Do you disagree? I mean, I think that's the world we live in. So I know that the work that I do, the purpose work that I was given to help adults in the world heal our own inner children, to get at the root cause, and then allow that to unravel for their kids and their kids and their kids. Now, I want to say this, that I do think that the younger generations are more aware of their trauma, but I don't know that they really have the right resources right now to heal from it. I think a lot of them are still stuck in the victimhood of it. And believe me, I do really believe that many of us were victims. I know I was a victim, and we absolutely need to acknowledge that. I spent a long time not acknowledging that I was a victim. And I'll tell you about that in just a moment. But we have to acknowledge that we are a victim, but we can't stay there, because if we are going to have children, it's our responsibility to repair inside, to reunite with the wounded child through reparenting, provide our wounded children what we didn't get and what we needed, what they missed out on, and heal. And then when we've done that, and we don't have to have it perfect before we have children, but we should be well on the way. In my idea of the world, what we would be doing is teenagers would be learning how to do this work. Young 20s would be learning how to do this work. We would be helping people to realize that you don't have to stay stuck in your wounds forever. That actually, after you have grown up and you are an adult, it is your responsibility to pick up where your parents left off, to fill in the gaps, to reparent your inner child, to heal those wounds. But instead, what we do is that we don't heal those wounds. Even if we go to therapy, a lot of people are not healing those wounds. And then we get into a relationship and we're looking to the partner that we're with to fill those unmet childhood needs, which are not theirs to fill. We get into all kinds of codependent relationships and places where everybody's looking to everybody else to basically fulfill their attachment wounds. But what if we were to be healing before we got into a relationship and we recognize our own responsibility, where we knew that it was our responsibility to reparent our inner child parts, so that when we get into a relationship, we're not asking for someone to be our mommy or daddy. We're looking to have a partnership. And then when we have children, we're not putting all of this wounding onto them. And that's my desire. My dream is that we do help people to honor and acknowledge the places where they've been a victim, and then give them the tools and the resources, like the Whole Soul Way, to be able to reparent their inner child so that they don't have to live that way forever, to liberate themselves from the past. Because it's bad enough to be abused or hurt, and then to suffer forever is just not okay. And that's why I'm so committed to the work that I do. And yes, it's true. I do deeply care about the children, but I also deeply care about all of you, everyone, because I don't want anyone to suffer more than we need to suffer. And we are suffering a lot more than we need to suffer, I think. Because if you don't know how to reparent your inner child, you don't even appreciate how stuck you are in the past. You probably don't even appreciate how much all of those patterns from your childhood are just playing out. There's this thing called Freudian repetition compulsion. And until we actually face our wounds from the past, they will continue to show up in our lives, repeating themselves until finally they get healed. That's what happens. So you just keep playing out the same thing over and over again, like Groundhog's Day. So you can either do that or you can heal it. And imagine if you heal it, and how much happier you would be in your own personal life, how much better your relationships would be, and how much less trauma you would pass on to your children. And this is not at all meant to be like, you do this, you bad mommy and daddy. This is meant to be inspiring. Come on, like, we can do this. You don't have to keep suffering. I don't want you to suffer. I hate watching how much people suffer. I really do. And of course, I hate how much children are suffering, but I actually see more of the adults suffering because I work with adults and I see how much they suffer every day. And I want them to free themselves. And, it does take a little more time, because reparenting your inner child isn't a one and done. It's not going to be just, go in and have, some type of experience where you're going to be healed. It takes time to unravel all of these things, but it's an incremental process that makes you feel better too. Yes, it's harder. Yes, it's ups and downs, but ultimately, it's the work that has the best hope for us to suffer less and to feel more free and liberated and to be able to be the best parents that we can be. I told you I was going to talk about me as a victim. It's really interesting because when I was first aware of what had happened, because it had been repressed in me for a while, but then something happened and it brought it to my awareness. And this wasn't just related to this abuse. This was also related to other circumstances, my bullying. I pretty much decided that I would never let them know that they hurt me. I didn't want them to think that they had power over me. But honestly, that just hurt me. Like I hurt myself by doing that. I remember that I literally would say, I'm not a victim. I will not let anyone ever tell me I'm a victim. And I was really fortunate that I had somebody probably like 8 to 10 years ago who said, but Deb, you were a victim. You were a victim when you were little. And you have to honor that if you want to heal. And that was so profound for me because I liked my, F you attitude. I liked my attitude of like, no way, no how. But when that happened, I did start to unravel the wounds and start to reclaim all that I lost by being a victim of such abuse. And not just that, though. I don't even think you have to have had that type of trauma. I think there are so many ways that we're emotionally neglected, so many ways that especially Generation X and boomers have been so emotionally neglected by not having anyone who had the language of emotions. And I don't blame people for it because we didn't know. We didn't know. I didn't even know. I mean, I had to learn how to have a language of emotions. I was so emotionally numb because that was my defense mechanism. I had to learn how to thaw out so that I could actually be an emotional being. But it was a learning. It was a melting, a softening. But I think that we have a lot of emotional neglect wounds and a lot of ways that people didn't attune to us, that people weren't there for us when we needed them to be. And yes, they might have taken care of all of our physical needs, but most of our emotional needs were not met. And again, it was a different time, but it doesn't mean that we can't learn it. And that's one of the things I hope that you take from this is that just because you didn't get it from your parents, and just because you were a victim of that generation at that time doesn't mean that you have to go your whole life without it. It's like anything. If you want to learn how to do something, you learn it, right? Like if you've never knitted before, you're not probably going to just be able to pick it up and start knitting. You're going to need someone to teach you. Same thing with emotional intelligence. Same thing with reparenting your inner child. I often get people say to me, well, how am I going to be able to give to my own child or to me, to myself, what I didn't get? It's there. It's still in there. You still have the capacity. You're a human being with the whole range of ways of being, but you probably do have to remove a bunch of barriers and walls and belief systems. You do probably have to thaw out and learn some things. You probably have to understand how to be the kind of parent that you need. You need to understand your own needs, your own feelings. And so, yeah, there's a lot that you have to do, but it is so worth it. It's not like you're doomed or destined for never having your emotional needs met. You just probably have to switch around the story that someone else is supposed to do that for you. Because here's the thing, when you're a little kid, when you're young, it's true. It's your parents' job to do that or your primary caregivers. And if they don't, it is going to probably cause some harm. That's very likely. You may or may not be aware of how much harm, because a lot of times we're just so used to it, we're swimming in it, but it's probably going to cause some harm. But once you become an adult, it's no longer your parents, nor it is your friends or your partners or anybody else's responsibility to fulfill those needs for you. At that point, it is yours. It's your responsibility to fulfill those needs for yourself. That might be crappy news. You might not like to hear that. But I would just say this, how's it working out for you looking to other people to do it? Because I don't know about you, but for me, it didn't work. No one else was giving me those things. I mean, maybe when I had my children and they were young, I was getting some of those needs met because there was a lot of affection and a lot of like mushy, gushy kid talk and play and all of that. So probably I got some of those needs met, but that wasn't their job to fulfill those needs either, right? Nobody else is really supposed to. They're going through their own stuff. The reason why they can't fulfill the needs oftentimes is because they can't even fulfill their own needs. They're struggling with their own lack in themselves, their own wounding. Do you see where I'm going here? What I'm trying to say is that it's not only the way that you're going to heal is by reparenting yourself, but literally it's your responsibility to. And if you want a good life, a fulfilling life, one that you feel like you are living authentically and you're fully alive, it's really that reclamation process of all the things that you lost in your childhood, whether it be through big traumas, whether it be through attachment wounding, or the ways that you were socially conditioned. It's our job to go back and reclaim those and then stand in our own power, find our own true selves. I know it's kind of a crappy thing because even to this day, I'm always looking for a knight in shining armor, someone who's going to make me feel loved and finally meet all those needs. And so I think we all have that fantasy, that desire. It just feels so delicious to imagine it. But I've had to at some point to say, I am not going to live in that fantasy world anymore. And it still catches up to me. It still bites me every once in a while, for sure. But I'm more realistic than I've ever been before. I will just say this too. I still have an attitude around my trauma. It's a little bit of an FU attitude. I'm like, yeah, okay, I was a victim, but no way in hell are you going to, meaning my perpetrator, steal my marriage, my health, my friendships, my agency, my authenticity, my trust, because all of those things were getting stolen. Every one of those things was getting stolen in my life because of the way that I was treated. And I think so many people think that when they mistreat their children, that it's not really going to impact them, especially the ones that say, well, I got spanked and I'm doing great. Look at me. Or, yeah, my parents just told me to get over it or whatever, and I turned out fine. Really? Okay, well, maybe you did, but I know for me that it's been an impact. The way that I experienced big T trauma, but also the way that I experienced smaller T traumas, little traumas. So I'm always like, not going to let my trauma own me. I am going to heal so that I can have the kind of marriage I want, so that I can be healthy, so I can have the kinds of friendships that are mutually fulfilling, so that I can stand in my own power, so I can trust. Trust has been so eroded from experiencing childhood abuse. Maybe you've heard of the ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. They've seen that if you have these kinds of events that happened when you were a child before the age of 18, they significantly impact a child's health and well-being throughout their life. Things like abuse, neglect, physical or emotional neglect, dysfunction in the house, maybe people who have substance abuse issues or mental health problems, someone who gets incarcerated, violence in the house, that could be witnessing violence in the house or actually in the community, parental separation, including divorce or separation of parents. And these things lead to things like health issues, chronic diseases, mental health disorders, substance abuse. It also leads to behavioral problems, risky behaviors like smoking and drug use, and developmental challenges. It actually has a long-term impact on brain development, emotional regulation, social. And there's been some evidence to specific connections to heart disease and neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. Now, there are some groups that are far more vulnerable and have many, many ACEs, children from low income families or in unstable or unsafe environments, and children who have parents who have mental health or substance abuse and use issues. That's why it's so important for us to be prioritizing our children and recognizing that to the best of our ability, we want to prevent those situations, or if we can't prevent them, because not all situations are preventable, that we do the very best to acknowledge the impact that it's having on our children and get them support, to not ignore them, to not pretend that those things aren't going to impact them. Even if we can't help them in their youngest years, perhaps when they're older, we begin to encourage them to get the types of services that they might need to heal from their past. So when I know that about me, that I have experienced adverse childhood events, they say adverse childhood events, adverse childhood experiences. I think I've heard it both ways, but I've always said adverse childhood events. But knowing that I know that I have to do this work in order to counter the negative effects. I need to reparent my inner child and give her the things that she needed and wanted as a child that she didn't get. I would highly recommend that if you have experienced trauma, that alongside your trauma work, that you learn the whole soul way, which is in season 1 of this podcast. There are 40 lessons, and it will show you how to be able to reparent your inner child. You can do it alongside trauma work, alongside working with a therapist, or you can join the evolution program and get support in our group coaching and community. I think some people think inner child work is just a bunch of lovey-dovey, hand to heart, doing fun things with our kid or whatever. And it's not. It is so much more potent and powerful. It is so much more specific and targeted to what our own wounds are, what our own unmet needs were, and providing those to ourselves. And that could be through conversation with ourselves and journaling. It could be through self-inquiry processes. It could be through meeting our needs on a physical level or an emotional level. It can be setting boundaries, asking for what we need, speaking up for ourselves, showing up authentically, proving to ourselves that we're worth our own effort. It could be confronting someone, having a conversation with somebody. I mean, there are just countless ways that we need to navigate so that we can repair our own relationship with ourselves and reunite ourselves with ourselves. I'll leave you with this thought that when we get wounded as children, what happens to us at the core level is that we have to disconnect from ourselves. And that could be because it's too painful physically, could be because it's too painful emotionally. It could be because we needed to watch outside of ourselves to become hypervigilant, to stay safe. So whatever it is, what happens is we turn away from ourselves and we are oriented toward other people meeting our needs. We're oriented toward the outside world and its level of safety and how much we need to defend and protect and brace ourselves. And so we're not really centered in ourselves. We're centered externally. We're looking at what's happening out there and how do we react and how do we handle it all? How do we defend? How do we protect? And when we have children, we end up feeling the same levels of hypervigilance oftentimes, but for our children as well. So it's such a burden to carry. So you can imagine that if we've turned away from ourselves and we don't know what we really feel, what we really need, what we're really going through, and we're really just living our lives in constant reaction to the outside world, well, that means we're really not living our life. We're living a life that's in reaction. So the work is for us to come back and to start to reconnect and reunite to ourselves, to tap into those things like our feelings, our needs, and our fears, and be able to tend to those and be there with ourselves. So that's what inner child work is. And that's why I think it's so important, because if we can be doing this work, we truly are changing the world. I consider this to be inside out activism. I say healing from our past, reclaiming ourselves and showing up truly as ourselves in the world, being able to be in situations and not react and instead choose to consciously respond, to be able to be more patient with our children, to be more present because we're not constantly scanning the world for safety or lack of safety and reacting. Imagine what that gives to our children. Imagine if we are social beings, which we are, and we also co-regulate with each other, that means that if my nervous system has become more regulated because I've done this healing work, because I've reparented my inner child and I continue to reparent my inner child, because I've understood the impact of my trauma on my body, on my being, that means that I am a more regulated being. And guess what that means for our children? It means our children literally get to borrow our nervous system. They get to regulate to us. It's called co-regulation. They also get to borrow our prefrontal cortex. So if we aren't living in our amygdala as much and we're now living in our prefrontal cortex, which is the more evolved center of our brain, and we're able to make choices thoughtfully, we aren't reacting as much as we are responding, and we are able to stay more present. Our children literally experience that from us, and it stretches them into their prefrontal cortex. It develops their prefrontal cortex. It's not just a teaching thing, it's a co-regulating thing. It's a mirror neuron thing. So what you do and how you change in your life doesn't just affect them socially, which it will, relationally, but it will affect them on a nervous system level. So this healing does unravel for everyone. And so if you care about the kids, if you care about your kids and your future kids and your future kids after that, all the generations of your grandchildren, then this is the most important work we can be doing. This is the most important work we can be doing. And so sometimes I wonder, I have wondered. I don't wonder now, but I wonder like what my purpose is, and is this really my purpose, and is it really helpful, and is it really meaningful? And sometimes it's harder for people to make this a priority in their lives because they look at all their imminent problems and they think, no, 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 I have to deal with all those problems. And when I come in and say, but what if those problems would start to dissipate or settle down if you did the inner work? A lot of people just don't believe it, or they don't feel like they have the capacity to. But anyone who starts doing this and then starts to see that, gosh, it's actually much easier to start inside and do it inside out versus trying to do the outside in. And when we're always exposed to all the challenges in life and we're just chasing after this problem and that problem and responding to every crisis and chaotic moment, it does feel like we don't have the time to do something else. But when you say, okay, wait a second, I'm going to stop, I'm stopping. And I'm going to realize that a lot of these things are happening because of all of the ways that we're relating and all of the reactions that we're having and all of the hypervigilance and the defensiveness. And so I'm going to turn inward and I'm going to start to see if I can become the lighthouse, see if I can become the one that's more regulated, see if I can become the one that can be more present, that I can be the, what is it, the eye of the storm and stay centered and be the pillar that other people can co-regulate too. Now that is when things start to change. And so I know people come to me all the time and say, Deb, no, 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 this isn't inner child work. This is real life. This is a real life situation. I'm like, yes, I know. And if we start with the inner child, we will then be more guided and more regulated and more capable of making a much better decision when it comes to the outside world, the real life world. I remember there was a point where I learned that me trying to parent my children in the moment was not nearly as effective as if I went back and I did inner child work first. And I realized so often what was showing up in my relationship with them or in their actions was an unhealed thing in me, a judgment that I had in me, a wound, something that needed to be looked at. And that when I looked at it and when I healed it, I know this is crazy, but a lot of times the thing just went away. The problem stopped being a problem. But when I tried to manage them and coach them and ask them a million questions and maybe set some rules, it's just like on and on and on. But when I went in and I said, no, 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 I'm going to figure out what's really going on. I would do a dialogue quadrant or I would do something to kind of reflect internally. Whew, so much easier. So this wasn't meant to be me telling you that you should do the whole soul way. What it's really meant to do is to tell you that I do believe that the inner work, our inner child work, is in service to our children, in service to the future of humanity. And I do want you to do the whole soul way. Listen, I make it nothing over you doing the whole soul way. Okay, you go ahead, do the whole soul way. I make nothing. I put it out there for free because I care so much about the kids. And care so much about your inner children and your life and your ability to not just, even if you're not a parent, just if you're a teacher, if you're just a person who walks along on the street and sees a child, wherever you are, the way you are, the way you show up matters in the world. I care about that. I put it out there for free for a whole bunch of reasons. One of them being that how is it if I care so much about the future of humanity, if I care so much about you not suffering, if I care so much about you healing and generational trauma and healing for our children, if I care so much about that, why am I going to make anybody pay for this? Because it's not just a business for me. This is a mission. This is a purpose. This is a much bigger thing than me. I know I was put here to help in this way. So I make nothing by you going and taking the whole soul way. Go do the 40 lessons. It's all free. If you want more support, yes, you would pay me for more support. But that's not the point. The point is, do you want to be part of changing the world? It's not going to happen in our generation. But do you want to be the one that 7 generations down the road, we've really turned things around and our society does really protect our children and the children really are centered and that our families are supported? Oh, wouldn't that be freaking amazing? So we can do that, but we got to start with our inner children. Okay, I started out feeling like it was so heavy and now I feel so much lighter, like remembering that reparenting your inner child makes us feel good. It's good for our children. It's good for the future of humanity. It's just good for everyone. Inner child work is the best. Okay. Thanks for being here.